In 1992, a rule change allowed the United States to send NBA players to the Olympics. Do you guys remember that? Anybody old enough? What was it called? Dream Team, right? And so on the first Dream Team was Michael Jordan, some of the greats. I remember it well, right? So Dream Team went to the Olympics playing against amateurs from all over the world. Big surprise. They dominated. They went undefeated and they won gold. And America thought, we're on to something here. And so then, 4 years later, Dream Team 2 went and they went undefeated and they won gold. 4 years later, Dream Team 3, they went and they won. You guys are on to something. 4 years later, Dream Team 4 went defeated. They disappointed the whole world, losing 3 games and only achieving bronze medals. Right? You're talking about the best players in the world playing against amateurs from around the world. And that's all they could do. And it wasn't for lack of talent. Dream Team 4 was thick with talent. Tim Duncan, Allen Iverson, LeBron James, Lamar Odom, and many more, right? And so it wasn't talent. They were ruined by comfort. You see, what happened was Dream Team 4 refused to live in Olympic Village with the other athletes. Instead, they had the Queen Mary II, a ginormous luxury ocean liner, brought in, and they lived in the port in Athens in this luxury liner, having basically superstar pampering around the clock, living like they were on vacation when they're trying to play the best players in the world for a championship. And so this pampering is thought to have ultimately weakened them. And so I bring this up just to kind of ask a question. Is it possible that a culturally ingrained pursuit of comfort weakens people and produces superficiality in us? I think we're so used to being comfortable that it makes us weak, it makes us soft, and it keeps us on the surface of life. Everything in the world is marketed to us based on comfort, convenience, and pleasure, right? Those are the things they're telling you. This is what it's going to give you. And our lives, they've become exceedingly busy and full of noise. We go around with headphones in all the time, scrolling videos as we go, right? And this creates an anxiousness in our souls, this lack of quiet. It's an anxiousness. And so as a culture, we've sought to soothe the anxiety in our souls with reward, pleasure, and comfort. And so as a nation, we're more focused on comfort and relaxation than we've ever been, and yet we're less relaxed and more stressed as people than we've ever been. And so the reason I say all this is that maybe treating ourselves physically isn't the solution we need. In fact, in Matthew 4:4, Jesus says this: man doesn't live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. So Jesus was saying that the provision he needed most profoundly would not come from anything physical, but from communication with God. And the reason I say all this is that there is a weariness and an agitation that stems from the starvation of our souls. And I think most of us walk around with hungry souls, and it makes us anxious, and it just creates a subtle weariness in us. And when Jesus was actually said those words, he was in the middle of a fast, right? When he said those words about living on bread alone. And so really quick to help everybody, what is fasting? Well, let me make it real simple. Basically, fasting is replacing body nourishment with soul nourishment. So rather than feeding my body with food, I'm going to resist that, and I'm going to spend the time feeding my soul on the presence and the word of God. And so Jesus had been fasting 40 days and 40 nights, and the Bible is real obvious, and it says, and he was hungry, right? So the devil comes to him and tempts him to turn stones into bread. Now, it's a weird temptation. Has anyone here ever been tempted with that same temptation? I haven't either, right? And so it's a strange temptation, but what this temptation was at its core was it was about reversing the commitment that Jesus had made. You see, Jesus had made the commitment in this fast to elevate his soul at the expense of his body. And so Satan was tempting him to elevate his body at the expense of his soul. And so in this fast, Jesus succeeded where the people of God typically fail. You see, as people, we fall into the trap of elevating physical realities over eternal realities. Like, we all struggle with this imbalance. Let me be honest, I struggle with this imbalance. We spend the majority of our time focusing on the things that are inherently physical and inherently temporary. And so then we struggle, and the nourishment of our souls ends up getting pushed to the margins of our life, and we're kind of grabbing moments here or there to nourish our souls when the bulk of our focus is on the temporary. But in this very extreme fast, 40 days and nights is a long time. In this extreme fast, Jesus was actually reversing that tendency. And so when Jesus came to earth, he was living as a human. So living as a human, Jesus knew that he needed a very robust or strong connection with God's Spirit more than he needed a strong body. And so he spent 40 days alone in the wilderness, praying, not eating, and just hanging out, with his primary focus being God's presence and God's voice. And so I want to be clear about this idea, is that fasting isn't just about a lack of food, it's also about a particular focus. You see, when we're fasting, what we're doing is we're essentially trying to clear the deck of everything we possibly can and focus on God. So how many distractions can I put away? How many other things can I get out of my frame of reference so that I can focus on God? That's why Jesus went to the wilderness to do this, right? And so there's three things quickly that I want us to see in Jesus' fast, because we're talking about fasting. It's all going to make sense in a minute. But there's three things. First, it's the denial of his physical body. Right? So he's denying himself physically, and he's prioritizing his spirit above that. Rather than feeding his body, he's feeding his spirit. The second thing is that he's praying, right? So he's not eating. If he wasn't praying, it would just be a diet. It wouldn't be fasting, okay? And so he's praying. And then there's also this period of very deliberate focus, right? He got away from people and went to the wilderness. It wouldn't have accomplished as much if he had been at home, around his family, around the disciples, around whatever. He had to go to the wilderness, right? He had to escape people. And so those three factors, what they did is they created a feast for his soul and a fast for his flesh. And so when we do those three things, we create a feast for our soul. And so I just want to be clear, typical life for us, typical American life, it fasts the soul and it feasts the flesh, right? But when we begin to practice regular, periodic fasting, that fasts the flesh, and in reverse, it feeds the soul. I want to show you a picture of a friend of mine that I don't really know him. Does anybody know who this is? His name is Matthias Schlitt. He is a German-born man, and he was born kind of deformed, in case you can't tell, right? So his right arm is 2 times the size and strength that it should be for the size of his body. He didn't develop it that way. He was born that way, all right? So while he weighs 154 pounds, he has the right arm of probably a 250-pound man. So he has won the weightlifting, the arm wrestling championship in so many countries around the world in that weight division, because he has a very specific kind of strength for a person his size. And I show it just to kind of make us think, right? Right? Like, if we look at that picture and we think about ourselves, which side of us would be the spirit and which side would be the flesh? The way that we typically live and handle our days. Most days, I'm sure we all have very spiritual days, right? But most days, Would the kind of scrawny, weakling side, would that be our spirit? Or would it be our flesh, our physical reality, right? I mean, I think if we're honest, the scrawny side is typically what I think our spirit kind of looks like in comparison to the strength of our flesh, right? But this practice of fasting that Jesus taught, what it does is it temporarily flips the script. So our soul is prioritized and strengthened as our body or our flesh shrivels. And as we do this with repetition over time, fasting begins to strengthen our spirit and bring balance between the two. Right? Now, at first, as we start off life and live normally, for many of us, when our flesh clashes with our spirit or our soul, our flesh wins so much of the time, doesn't it? I mean, like maybe we know we should contain our temper. How many of you guys have been tempted to be angry? You knew you should control yourself, but you got angry and lost your temper anyway. Anybody? Right? Or maybe we know we shouldn't gossip, but it's just such a tasty tidbit. And it's like, how many of you guys have ever refused to share a gossipy thing like 3 or 4 times, and then you finally break down and you still say it? You're like, dang it, I should have just said it the first time, right? Like it's just so hard because our flesh is strong and our spirit is comparatively weak. We know sometimes that we should be kind, but there's this combativeness in us that's so strong. We know we should be resisting the urge to be negative sometimes. Right? And it's like, but that sometimes that hold on us is so strong. And so here's what fasting does. Fasting gives our soul a fighting chance when it comes to temptation. When we do it over time, we strengthen our soul and we comparatively begin to weaken our flesh. In Matthew 6:16 through 18, Jesus said this, when you fast, I want you to notice that he did not say if you fast. So there's an assumption from Jesus that you would fast. When you fast, do not look somber, as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others their fasting. Truly, I tell you, they've received their reward in full. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face so that it will not be obvious to others that you're fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen. And your Father who sees what's done in secret will reward you. So again, Jesus was working under the assumption that you and I, as his followers, would fast. And at that point, when Jesus was saying this, fasting had always been a regular spiritual practice of God's people. The Old Testament Jews, they did it all the time. And now, in this passage, as Jesus is setting up the new covenant, he is carrying fasting over into the new covenant. He's saying, this was a great thing from the Old Testament. I want my followers to keep doing it. Right? So he sets it up, but then he gives us this warning. Don't look somber. And the question would be, why were they looking somber? Well, the reason was that people were trying to make the physical strain. How many of you guys have ever tried to fast? Raise your hand. Anybody? I'm going like this so I hold my shirt down and I don't show you my belly because I haven't been fasting. It's hard to fast, isn't it? It's a physical strain. It's like, I don't love this, right? And so what was happening is that they were looking somber on purpose because they were trying to show the physical strain they were under by looking disheveled. They were like, I just don't have the strength to fix my hair today. I don't have the strength to wash my face. Like, I can't even change into clean clothes. And they're hoping someone's going to come up to them and go, what's wrong, Becky? And you're going to go, I'm just so tired because I've been fasting for the Lord and I've got no strength, right? And they're going to go, oh, you are so spiritual. You're amazing. I wish I was like you, right? And so Jesus is saying, listen, fasting, it's not intended to make you look spiritual. And if we're not careful, we can be more focused on standing out to people than we are on tuning in to God. And the problem is that intentional self-glorification is a risk that we're going to have to learn to avoid if we're ever going to gain the spiritual benefits of fasting. Because fasting is about suppressing our sinful flesh and elevating our spirit. So if we're feeding our pride when we're doing it, we're actually accomplishing the opposite of what we're trying to do. So we fast. When we fast with proper motives, we're actually accomplishing a few things. And we're close to being done, so stick with me. But first of all, we're exiting the shallow, noisy physical reality that we're used to. So when you're fasting, you're taking all that noise and you're just getting away, and you're entering this deep, still, eternal, spiritual reality. Just take a minute and don't make a sound with me. We don't have many moments like that, do we? Part of fasting is finding this place in your heart and your soul with your master. Many of our souls suffer from superficiality. We're living on the surface all the time in a culture that keeps us up there. And fasting reverses that, and it brings us to a deeper place. We're also strengthening our spirit in relationship to our flesh. Remember the guy with the strong arm. And so in fasting, we're taking our spirit from being the weak, scrawny side to being the strong side. And the more we do that, the more permanent that arrangement becomes. And the last thing we do is that we expand the bandwidth of our connection to God. How many of you guys have ever been doing something online and all of a sudden your bandwidth, your internet just, it's like the video's going or whatever it is, and all of a sudden it's like it's buffering. Like, where did all of my internet go, right? And what happens is the way that we typically live, it squeezes off the bandwidth of our connection to God. But as we fast, it suddenly opens it up and it allows this current to rip through and meet us where we are. And so here's what we're doing. Here's why I'm saying this. At Grace Union, we're starting a recommended regular monthly fast. And do you know what it's going to be called? The Fast of the Month. You know why it's called the Fast of the Month? Because it's going to happen every month on the first of the month. And when I grew up, there was a song called Wake Up, it's the fast of the month, get up. Anyway, and so I'm telling you, this is not a lie. So on Sunday, we're going to have a little video that's going to play. And every month, we're going to remind you, it's the fast of the month, get up. And so here's... I know you guys are losing it now, but I'm telling the truth, right? And so what we're doing is we're encouraging everybody to begin this practice to some degree of fasting. And the reason is, why do we need this silly thing to fast? Because it's easier to do hard things when someone else is doing it with you, right? How many of you guys have ever decided you're going to go to the gym and you wake up and you don't go? But what happens when you know someone's meeting you there? You're like, dang it, I got to go. And so when we do this together, it's like, hey, you know what? There's a lot of us who are going to be fasting on the first of the month, so I'm going to be okay. And so the question that maybe you're asking is, what should my fast look like? Well, that's largely up to you, because there's a lot of different kinds of fasting. There's partial fast. Sometimes in Scripture, when it says they fasted 3 days, it meant during the daytime hours. And so you could fast 2 meals a day, eat 1 meal in the evening, right? There's complete fast where you just fast for 24 hours. Or you can fast particular kinds of food. Like there's people talk about the Daniel fast in the Bible where they only ate vegetables and drank water, which sounds worse than not eating at all. And so it's like, what's the only thing worse than not eating? Eating gross stuff, right? And so anyway, so there's like, you could do a particular kind of fast. I've seen people fast things that are distractions, like fasting television, fasting social media, something like that. There's a million different ways you can do it, okay? What it really comes down to is whatever you do, the purpose we're trying to accomplish is this regular and repeatable method of subjugating our flesh and pushing it down and elevating our spirit. And as we do that, our soul is strengthened. It goes from being the skinny, scrawny arm to being the strong arm. And the bandwidth of our connection to God it's expanded. So I want to encourage you, just so you know, the first one is going to be this Sunday, the next first of the month. So I'm going to eat breakfast on Saturday, and then I'm not going to eat again, and I'm going to break my fast with lunch on Sunday. I'm going to celebrate that way. And so like I said, you can play with it and change it, but just know the first of the month, I'm going to be fasting. I encourage you guys to fast with me. We're going to start talking about it every month, and over time, we're going to make this a practice of our church. But here's talking about bandwidth of God. We're going to jump right back into worship and keep pursuing Him.